Hello, creatives. So I'm trying to get situated here because I have a long night of writing ahead of me, but I did want to pop in and kind of talk about why I structured my story the way I did. If you've been keeping up to date, you'll know that on Monday I talked about the advice that my editor gave me and how I was really freaked out about it because, well, you can watch the video here if you want to check it out. But I'm in the process of changing everything about like the first 20% of the book to try to make some of those set it up to make some of the changes needed later on in the book to address the issues that the editor pointed out. And I want to talk about the 5-act structure because this is something that I really love. I love the 5-act structure. And if you're not familiar with story structure and like 3 acts versus 5 acts, I mean, most people are familiar with the 3-act story structure. It's pretty simple and pretty universal. It's used in plays and movies and books, throughout all of time, basically. But I really like the 5-act story structure because I feel like there's more flexibility and there's in terms of laying out the plot points. And the advice that my editor gave me would kind of disrupt the natural breaks that I have within the acts that are set up. So not to say that like the way that I've ended each act needs to end in that way, but there was a very, in my perspective, a very natural break between each part of the story. And so like, the first 20% of the book, you're being introduced to the world, introduced to the conflicts, introduced to the characters, and what all is at stake and the motivations that every character has that will either hinder the plot line for the book or progress it. And then the second 20%, so up to 40% of the book, you then have the pieces being moved and the stakes getting a little bit higher as people are starting to realize the depth and breadth of the situation. And then you have the 3rd act, so up to 2/3 of the way into the book, then you have like the first big like plot reveal, the first big climax of the story. There are a lot of things happened leading up to this big moment. That was a subplot within the grander plot. And then in the 4th act, you have some really key decisions that have to be made by all parties. Like there's kind of an undoing sort of thing that happens in the 4th act. And the 5th act is sort of the denouement, a denouement and a climax, resolution and a climax. So it's hard to explain without revealing too much. But like I like the 5-act story structure because you can have multiple. It's much easier to put in multiple subplots within a 5-act story structure than it is with a 3-act story structure. And that's the case with my book. And the editor suggested cutting a lot of it, which I think would disrupt the natural flow that the story has already. So I'm trying not to focus too much on the cutting right now, as I am trying to focus on the adapting. So I'm working on adapting the book to accommodate some of the suggestions that the beta readers and the editor have made in terms of, character development, some things that weren't quite clear enough, small things, and well, I say small, but some of the chapters are being rewritten into different POVs to accommodate the jarring. There was a comment made that it was kind of jarring to move from first person to third person, because the first 20%, the first act of the book was written in first person, and then the remaining 4 acts alternated POVs between the first person narration and third person narration, depending on the different character you were following. What I'm doing now is that I'm moving up the third person narration, so it's hopefully not as jarring, because you spend 20% of the book reading in one POV, and then all of a sudden you're reading in third person POV. So hopefully the experience isn't as jarring when I think now the first third person POV is introduced in like the 3rd chapter. So you have the 3rd or 4th chapter. So the first couple chapters are written in first person, and then you start jumping around and you start seeing the other players that are playing the game, essentially. So yeah, and I feel like with the nuances and complexity, I've been told that it's ambitious. It's an ambitious piece of work by the editor, and I think one of the beta readers even said like this was really complicated, and like the way that you're putting this together is really quite mind-boggling. I got that from either one or both, some kind of comment like that, from 2 out of the 3 at least of the people that have read it. And so yeah, I feel like the 5-act story structure provides more room to play with the more nuanced plot lines and characterizations and world building sort of thing. I feel like a lot of times when I read stories that are read or watch stories that are very clearly a 3-act structure, I feel like there's almost and too much is spent on not the right details, in order to fill up the space of this is the act. There needs to be space filled in, and I feel like with the 5-act story structure, you're forced to move the plot forward a little bit quicker, because each act is more succinct, which then also gives room to play around with other people's stories. So you don't have to just follow one character, because one character's plot line may not be enough for the entire story, but certainly several can. I don't know if any of that made sense to anybody, but it makes sense to me. So I'm gonna finish making dinner, and after that make some tea and get to writing, because I'm not as far along as I would like, but I'm gonna give a writing update, right? I have a writing update on the schedule. So I'll have a writing update for you guys closer to the end of the month. But so far, for right now, I'm just going through the first act, rewriting some things, and I just wanted to talk about why I love the 5-act story structure. So with that said, until next time.